Hello, I'm Emily Jo Matthews and I'm the director. The script we've chosen to look at is Underline, and we will be discussing between the restaurant fight scene and where Irving collapses. To me, this script felt like an opportunity to manipulate the audience's emotions to influence their feelings and beliefs. There's strong political threads introduced throughout the episode, and therefore it is vital to see the gritty reality of the character's everyday life in order to have a strong opinion on the politics that it is speaking out against. I wanted the overall feel to be gritty and raw, in a way which is realistic to such circumstances in life, whilst also demonstrating unnaturalistic filmmaking techniques, creating a feeling of uncomfortableness for the audience. The most important element of this section is evoking emotion and gut responses, regardless of how realistically it is portrayed through the visuals and sound. I had a few specific visuals which I drew out and showed to the cinematographer. The most important aspect I emphasised was the overarching yo-yoing of shot types. Uncomfortably close to uncomfortably wide. Static to handheld and shaky. I wanted it to look like the feeling of distress. One specific way I wanted to contribute to this was through errors. For example, quite similar to how in Shutter Island it looks like someone is picking up a glass but they've forgot the glass in their hand, which seems like a continuity error, but then they put it down with their other hand. This is intentional because it's trying to make the audience feel like they're going just as insane as the character is. I had the idea to mismatch the words coming out of Daniel's mouth when Irvin is about to faint. His mouth moving but the sounds coming out differently, disjointed, in the wrong place. I also wanted the pulsing red lights from the street to return. We're in Irvin's shoes. He doesn't know where he is, and neither do we. The relationship between Daniel and Irvin progresses throughout the episode, but their chemistry is apparent from the very beginning. I would have the actors read the dialogue in a fast-paced manner, coming across as hot-headed, but also they're finding it really easy to communicate with each other. In terms of aesthetic, I want the restaurant scene and this alley sequence to be cohesive. Whilst I imagine the restaurant sequence with green shadows and visible grime, I wanted the alleyway to be similarly grimy, but also shrouded in darkness. I pictured the restaurant's colours to be slightly unnatural, similar to the opening sequence in Casino Royale. The fight scene in the bathroom follows some shots outside, shot in black and white in complete darkness. This really emphasises the grime and the green tones within the colouring. The locations will be uninviting and intimidating, all contributing to the uncomfortable effect I would like to achieve.
Hi, my name is Ewan and I'm the cinematographer for this project. Now, I had a very clear image of what I wanted and I was very excited to bring it to life. I started with the script breakdown. For each shot in that scene, I wanted to make a note about something that I could do to make it look as good as possible. As you can see, I had a clear image for each shot and I concentrated on the style of the shot and what was happening in each shot. For example, the first stage direction is accompanied by notes saying that I wanted an extreme close-up of the can being kicked, specifying that I only wanted the can and the character's foot in the shot only for it to pan outwards towards a more wide, medium, maybe far shot. Once I had written notes of the cinematography that I wanted, it was time to make the storyboard. I made rough sketched out versions of my script breakdown and added various notes such as the type of lenses. The first pictures show how I wanted a zoom lens, specifically a 75mm telephoto lens to create a nice pan outwards. Later, I wanted to switch to a 50mm lens to add background blur when Irvin is in distress, as well as being the ideal lens for handheld cameras, which I also wanted. I also wanted a variety of shots, ranging from extreme wide shots to extreme close-ups, but the most interesting part of this project for me was when I collaborated with the director on ideas. We discussed two main ideas around the part of the scene where Irvin begins to collapse. When the camera's off him, we wanted to use static cameras on tripods, and when the cameras were on Irvin, we wanted to use handheld cameras to give it more of a shaky look. We wanted to make it as though the audience can feel the nausea that Irvin can as he's collapsing. When in conversation with the director, they also pitched the idea of purposefully using continuity errors to show how Irvin's feeling. My main contribution to this is the 180 rule. By breaking it and shooting Irvin from every angle instead of the 180 typically used in cinema, by shooting Irvin from every angle, it creates confusion and an uncomfortable feeling, giving the audience an indication that something is wrong. Thank you, and this is how I'd contribute to being the cinematographer in this project.
Hi, I'm Mason Clancy, and I'm working on sound for Underline, Money and Shiny Things. The primary role of sound in the scene we've chosen is to create atmosphere. The approach to sound in our chosen scene would focus on using diegetic sounds to ground the viewer in the same environment the characters are in. For instance, ensuring that Daniel, using the calculator, is seen and heard at the same time towards the start of the scene. Then we do the same for other sounds such as pots and pans clanging or doors banging shut. This will be done through the use of Foley sound and ADR to ensure there's better sound quality and greater control over the result. A film scene that I think does this well is the opening scene in Logan. Not only does the setting and general atmosphere of the scene feel similar to what I feel the script conveys, the way they use sound is similar to what I'm attempting to achieve.
Guys, those are chrome-plated lugs. You're gonna strip them. Plating flakes off.
Yeah?
You know, this is the lease. No one's gonna pay to ride.
The music playing from the car radio, conversations, the gravel beneath Logan's feet. We hear it all as he would, and we experience it all as he would. As we get to the confrontation between Irvin and the restaurant workers, we would start to approach sound less conventionally. For instance, we would take sounds used previously in the scene and separate them from their source to create confusion and discomfort in the audience. We'd also do this through volume. Sounds such as Irvin breathing and swallowing would be much more noticeable in order to make the audience feel close to him and create a sense of claustrophobia. These would be recorded on set using a boom pole and zoom recorder in order to get a more realistic sound that matches the physicality of the actor in the scene. In this instance, I believe Ari Aster's Midsommar exemplifies the approach I'm going for. Midsommar does a lot of interesting things with sound. For instance, it removes ambient sounds such as bird noises and wind to create a higher room tone. In doing so, Aster ensures the audience is slightly on edge and uncomfortable. The unconventional approach is subconsciously picked up on by the audience. While our approach is more direct, the goal remains the same. Overall, I believe that sound is here to support the goals of camera, direction, and production design. The choices work effectively, not just on their own merit, but when layered with the techniques seen in other areas of filmmaking.
Hi, I'm Ollie Nicholson, and my role for this project is editor. The first thing I want to talk about is the colour of the scene. We want it to feel gritty and a bit disgusting, and to reflect this, we consider using a green tint or a filter to the scene. Not so much so that it's over the top, but enough so it's noticeable. I think this will not only reflect the emotions of the two main characters, Irvin and Daniel, but will also make the audience feel very uncomfortable. While talking about the colour grade, I think a highly saturated image would complement the close-ups we plan to use very nicely. It's easy to imagine the sweat oozing from the owner and his friend, and the two main characters as they panic about the situation they're in. For this reason, I think a highly saturated image utilising warm tones in combination with uncomfortable close-ups would make the scene feel claustrophobic and suffocating. The yellowish-green image combined with the sweaty characters would almost make the scene feel very humid, allowing the audience to share the discomfort with Irvin and Daniel. I think the most important element of the restaurant scene is the gradual build in tension. In order to build this tension as editor, I would use a variety of different techniques. First of all, I would start the scene using almost exclusively wide and medium shots. Then as the scene progresses, I would flash in close-ups of certain things in the scene, such as Irvin clenching his fist, the dusty ceiling fan, a close-up on the lips of the characters as they talk to each other. Essentially anything that either reflects the setting or reflects the characters. I think this also really relates to the themes of discomfort that we're trying to convey. To complement this, I'd also include a developing soundscape that starts off relatively normal, but then changes as the scene develops. We hear the ceiling fan, a fly buzzing around the room, Daniel punching numbers into his calculator, and the muffled voices of the two, owner and his friend, in the background. But as the scene develops and Irvin gets more frustrated, these sounds get louder, more annoying, more intense, until they become almost unbearable to listen to. Then when Irvin finally lets his anger out and snaps, all these sounds immediately stop. There's a silence in the room, and that adds to the tension. I think this would be an excellent way of building tension, personally. I think all the different images flashing in front of the screen, as well as these sounds that are building, getting more annoying, getting louder, would really make the audience feel uncomfortable, which adds to our themes from before. After the restaurant scene, Irvin communicates with Daniel down the street as he slowly loses consciousness. To reflect this for editing, I would warp and curve the images using filters. We'll also use jump cuts. The audience will see the POV of Irvin as he starts to have double vision and become disorientated. I would also consider having Daniel's voice desynced from his mouth movements, as well as echoed to add to the confusion that Irvin and the audience will share. This would all eventually lead to a fade to black as Irvin collapses to the ground.
Okay, first things first when it comes to design, I need the script so I can take it and begin researching and then liaise with the director, the DOP and other departmental heads so we can start crafting the visual look of the film. Let me take this segment for example and let's talk about location first. The director assured me that they wanted the Chinese restaurant in this section and the alleyway in the bit that follows to be proper grimy. I'm talking real disgusting and not looking good. So I went out and researched and put together a little mood board of what I had in mind. We took a lot of inspiration here from the movie Joker when it came to the alleyway and some other aspects. We've really wanted to emphasise the grottiness and disgustingness of this alley and of the Chinese restaurant so that it could reflect where Ewan is in his life now and it's contrasting to his rich-looking demeanour from how he dresses. An aspect agreed upon by the director, DOP and myself is the use of neon lights in the Chinese restaurant, taking a lot of inspiration here from the movie Good Time and its use of neon lights. The neon lights would be a key detail I would mention to the location manager when sourcing the location for the Chinese restaurant, as both that and the alleyway would be filmed on location as opposed to building sets. If the neon lights were not found on location, I would make note of this to the art department and the head lighting technician so they could be brought in if needed. The restaurant itself would also be a bit dirty, full of grease marks, and it'd be clear that it hadn't been well looked after. And the aforementioned neon lights would be flickering quite a lot. When it came to costume, I also put together some mood boards to get a general sense of design for each of the characters. Evan is the most defined in the script in that he's wearing a suit and some specifically Olden shoes. I picture him wearing a blue suit and black shoes, as this isn't a very typical combination, as usually advised against, because this reflects that Irvin doesn't really know the world that he is in, and he's out of his depth. To maintain his illusion of being in the high roller world, Irvin would be wearing a Bond-style expensive watch, like a Rolex or an Omega. The owner and chef would be wearing a black chef-style jackets with accents of red, to signify their viewed superiority over Daniel, who would just be wearing a black shirt they'd given him, as well as him wearing a pair of beaten-up trainers, which is in contrast to Irwin's expensive Olden shoes.